Being away from my abusive dad made me think that my life would finally become better, especially because my boyfriend was very loving and promised to help me with everything, including my financial problems. I was finally able to live a normal college life and even live it to the fullest. I was happy. I felt so lucky, so blessed, so privileged. But that didn't last for long. Not when I found out my boyfriend was cheating on me. I got mad, I screamed, I broke things and left him for good. I got depressed for weeks, but I knew I needed to let it go and move on. I decided to start all over again and rely only on myself. And life as a college student was not easy, and life as a struggling college student with an after-class office job in New York City was even harder. I worked the 4 to 11 shift at a big company office. It wasn't the best job in the world, and it barely helped me pay my bills and college dues, but it was better than nothing. However, someone had the pleasure of making me and my coworkers' situation much harder. Everyone hated Amelia. She was the manager of my branch and a completely rich girl. She would strut around the office asking employees what they thought about the latest designer bag she had acquired, always stating the off-the-roof price it entitled. She would laugh at those who could not afford lunch while she ate expensive meals. She was a despicable human and an even worse manager, and that evening she was approaching my desk specifically. "Good evening," I stated, not even turning to look at her. "Good evening. I just wanted to let you know that the pay raise you requested was declined." My eyes widened, and this time I did turn around to look at her. "Amelia, you control the pay raises. I need the money. I can barely make it to the end of the month," I said, my eyes pleading. "That is not my problem," she spat back. "The company can't afford to lose that much money." I saw red as she left. The company can't afford it, or you refuse to get paid less in order to live in your Barbie dream house, I exclaimed and slumped back down in my chair. Tears started rolling down my cheeks. I was upset. I was furious. I looked at the time and realized that my shift was thankfully over. I grabbed my stuff and went home. Arriving home, I realized I didn't have anything to eat for dinner. I didn't have extra money either, so I decided to just go to sleep and start fresh. The next morning, I put on an old t-shirt and shorts and laid down in bed. I was so done with my life, so done with the struggle, so done with Amelia and her lack of consideration and empathy. I wished for once that she could feel exactly the way I felt. But I didn't have a lot of time to wish for anything else because soon enough, I fell sound asleep. Waking up, something already felt weird. I was covered in a feather duvet and surrounded by fluffy pillows. Something that definitely did not belong in my usual bedroom. It didn't take me long to jump up from my comfortable bed to realize that I was not where I was supposed to be. The room was white and big, and it looked like it belonged to a millionaire, with a big bed, enormous amount of space, and probably an ensuite bathroom as well. I furrowed my eyebrows in confusion. What was I doing here? And who did this room belong to? But I didn't have time to think because the alarm on my phone went off. However, it wasn't even my phone. It was an expensive phone. One of those I just knew I couldn't afford. I turned it off and sat for a minute to process. I had not drank because I couldn't afford to party. I had not been kidnapped because I was very sure I wouldn't be put in a room so nice. And I was not delirious either because everything felt very true around me. I stood up and inspected the room. There were no pictures, no marked items, nothing that would give me clues to find out who the room, the phone, and everything that surrounded me belonged to. I walked out of the room in the outfit I was wearing that was surprisingly the same scrawny t-shirt and shorts I usually wore to sleep. I was in a penthouse overlooking the Hudson River with an outstanding view of the Statue of Liberty. I was alone, and there was a silence that was almost deafening. Another voice spoke up, making me jump. "It's 9:30. Time to go to work." It was a smart speaker. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was indeed 9:30. I couldn't afford to miss a day of work. Whoever's house this was, she had the same work schedule as mine. I wondered what to do. I didn't know if I was supposed to go find out who had placed me in that room while I was asleep. If I was to go to my actual home and get some answers, or simply just go to work and not lose the amount of money I couldn't afford to lose for one day. I thought maybe if I go to work, some people can clear up my doubts. Tell me who this house belongs to. It sounded like a good idea. Since I did not have time to go home and get clothes, I would just take some clothes from the owner's closet. I needed to find out what was going on. I walked back into the room hoping to find what to wear and hoping that something would fit in her closet that was very different from mine. A big white closet that displayed every designer brand. You could think of bags made of expensive materials for coats and dresses that belonged to runway shows, jewelry displays that screamed, diamonds are a girl's best friend and could leave a person blind with their shiny objects. I knew I would not be able to afford it by myself. Business suits and heels caught my eye very quickly. Fortunately for me, whoever owned this house had the same work style as mine, meaning she possibly worked a similar job as me. It was curious the amount of small similarities we shared. Either way, I put on a dress and a pair of heels and walked out the door. Ready, or so I thought, to take on Amelia. Walking into work, I was surprised that no one had noticed the changes. I was wearing designer heels and the dress I was wearing looked too nice to belong to me, which gave me a strange sense of confidence that I had found myself lacking. I approached my desk to find somebody already sitting there. To my dismay, it was Amelia. "Good morning, Amelia." I greeted her, and she looked up at me. Her face was red and puffy as if she had been crying. She did not even look up at me. "Good morning," she growled, focusing on her work again. "Why are you sitting at my desk?" I blurted out, and she looked at me with an incredulous face. Standing up, she crossed her arms in disgust. "Aren't you funny, making fun of your employees when you know your situation is so much better?" I looked at her in confusion. My eyes roamed her outfit. I recognized the cheap suit and the tattered kitten heels. My world froze for a moment and a crazy thought popped into my head. What if Amelia and I had changed lives? It was insane and ridiculous, but there was no other possible answer. She was sitting at my desk, wearing my clothes, doing my work. Amelia was a manager, hated by everyone in my office, and now I felt hated. I thought of sharing my insanity, but Amelia was staring me down. She looked upset that she had lost her royal life, and for once I did not care. "I'm sorry." Those were words no one ever heard Amelia say. It was not my intention to make you feel that way. She rolled her eyes at me. "Whatever," she said, and sat down to continue working. I walked to what used to be Amelia's office, now mine, and sat down on the comfy chair. A lot of thoughts ran through my mind, and I was very curious about what had happened between me and Amelia. Somehow, I had stolen Amelia's life and had given her mine. I was now a high-class manager, and she was a struggling college student. How did things like that even happen? However, another train of thought rushed me. I can use my new position to make things better. Changing the story. Someone interrupted my train of thought. Philly, the assistant, came in. He was always fearful around Amelia. He was shaking and quiet as he entered the room. "Your coffee, miss?" he said, setting down the cup on my desk. "Good morning, Philip. How are you doing?" I beamed with joy. He looked at me, his eyes widening. "I'm good, thank you, miss." He smiled and then left the room. My plan was to work. After work, I decided to indulge in the richness of Amelia's, or now my, life. I went back to her apartment and took a big bubble bath. Roaming through her fridge, I found an expensive bottle of champagne and already made dinner. I looked into her bank account and was shocked with the income Amelia had. I went window shopping with a strange feeling of knowing that I could buy anything I wanted. I had struggled with money most of my life, and being allowed to have some treats felt like heaven. I went back to sleep in the big duvet-clad, fluffy pillow-filled bed that night. As much as I loved Amelia's life, I knew that money came from hard work and that it does not buy happiness. However, Amelia did not know that she was only a manager because of her grandparents used to own the company, and all her money came from their wealth. In comparison, Amelia hadn't worked a day in her life. The next few days, I worked on adjusting to my new life while trying to figure out why and how I was suddenly living in luxury. I also tried helping others and changed the atmosphere in my office. I smiled and acknowledged my employees and their hard work. I gave people chances to work hard and grow in the business. I treated everyone with kindness. However, for some reason, Amelia's former behavior was not being forgotten by my coworkers. The luxury life became disgusting really soon. To my dismay, people started using me for money, asking me for favors, and talking behind my back. As good of a manager as I could try to be, the income I made was still envied, and people around me would just look at the money instead of my personality, with the remains of Amelia's horrible disposition always lingering. That made me sour. To my horror, I realized that I was turning into Amelia myself. I tried to be kind, and I had always been rejected. My behavior around people soon became snappy and entitled. I was not able to ignore the horrible comments that were made about me. The amount of hatred was turning me into a distasteful, angry person, and Amelia's riches were not the answer. That wasn't myself, and I knew it, and I hated every single part of it. The big breaking point was one afternoon, someone knocked on my office door. "Come in," I said, and Amelia walked in silence. Her head was down and she was shuffling her feet as if she was shy. She sat down in front of me. "How can I help you, Amelia?" I asked. She looked at me and a tear rolled down her face. "I need help. I'm struggling. I can't pay my rent anymore. I'm about to get kicked out of my apartment and I can't adjust to this new life. I really can't." I nodded. "I don't really know how this happened, Amelia, but I know what you're going through. And instead of doing what you would have done in this case, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to promote you." Amelia's eyes widened and a smile glowed on her face. "You are?" she asked in disbelief. "Yes, but just because I understand what it's like to struggle, and I don't want that for you. I am showing you why kindness matters." "Thank you." She smiled, and I could tell she was really thinking about my words. She stood up and walked out, even though everyone at the office still hated me. I was certain that helping Amelia was the right thing to do. Even with my newfound luxury, I would never have wished a constant struggle to anyone, not even Amelia. Amelia really improved with her promotion. She was able to pay rent and pay for her college dues. She worked harder than ever before, and she became extremely kind to everyone around her. She even saved enough money to treat herself to small luxuries like going on a holiday where she actually found love in a way. In a way, I was jealous of her. Yet, she didn't have a big bank account, but people had actually grown to like her. She had a purpose and a life worth living now, filled with joy and happiness, much different than me. Months went by slowly and painfully. The loneliness was killing me, and I was getting tired of the luxury life. I couldn't find a way out of it or an answer to how I had stolen Amelia's life and given her mine. I grew more desperate with it every day that passed. For once, I missed my normal struggling life. It was cold one night, and the penthouse was even colder. I settled in between the duvet and the pillows, the only comforting and nice thing I could find about living in Amelia's shoes. By then, I was exhausted and depressed, and all I wished was to go back to my normal life, even with its bad things. I woke up the next morning. Shock creeped on me when I realized I'd woken up in my old apartment wearing the same t-shirt and shorts. I had changed my life, and I was lying in my old, uncomfortable bed. It had all been a dream. It was the same unsettling feeling I had when I found out I was living Amelia's life, but I smiled. I had missed my old life. I walked into work with a skip in my step. I was oddly happy to be back, to be a struggling college student, and I was strangely looking forward to my previous job as an intern. My desk looked the same, and everyone around me looked like they had before. And to my surprise, no one hated me. Instead, they were happy to see me, which felt very strange but heartwarming at the same time. However, I knew every dream had to have a nightmare. I was called to Amelia's office. I walked to her office with this wrenching feeling that my newfound happiness was going to be cut off immediately, and I knocked on the door. Amelia's voice was squeaky and entitled again, and I certainly did not like it. I walked in and sat in front of her. She breathed out as if preparing to give an important speech. "I am going to promote you," she stated. My world went blank for a few seconds. "I'm sorry?" I asked, not believing what I had just heard. "A promotion would mean possibly solving a lot of my financial problems." "This is difficult and strange for me to admit," Amelia said. "But I think I know what you're going through." I tried to process what she was saying. It oddly reminded me of my dream. "I have to ask you something crazy, but you really need to listen." I said and started telling her everything about the dream, about how everything had been different. I asked her for her kindness and told her that I knew the value of hard work. Something in my story interested her because she listened all the way through without talking. I left her office with a signed promotion and a smile on my face. However, before leaving, I turned around to notice an upset expression, as if she was missing something. "Amelia?" I asked, and she looked up at me with a curious eye. "Me and some girls are going to dinner after work on Friday. Maybe you can join? It's not going to be anything very expensive, probably a bottle of wine and Chinese takeaway, while singing karaoke." I laughed, "But it's good fun." A surprising smile grew on her face, and she nodded. "Yeah, I think I will join," she said, and I saw her smile stay for a few seconds as I closed the door. I left her office. 2 hours later, smiling, feeling positive that I had gotten through to her, and indeed I had. Amelia started being kind to everyone, even me. She had come to the dinner and turned out to be more fun than everyone thought. Chinese takeaway and just needed real friends who wouldn't care about money. She gave amazing opportunities, and my coworkers started looking up to her as an example. She even found love in a guy from my branch. She looked happy, and as did everyone else. It was turning out to be like my wishes, and I was elated. As for me, I found myself in a home decor store. I looked around, thinking about how much money I had made with my new promotion, enough to pay my bills in college that I decided to treat myself and bought a white, cozy duvet and a bunch of fluffy pillows. Hi, my name's Judy, and I want to tell you a story that happened to me in my grandmother's mirror. You might think that nothing unusual can happen because of one simple mirror, but this story really changed my life. I've always been a loser among people, and besides, I've never considered myself beautiful. I was also not popular among boys. I was sure that the reason was my acne and my crooked nose. I honestly thought the boys only liked girls with clear skin and a cute face. This conviction had a great impact on my self-esteem. So I tried not to talk to anyone at all. I made the exception only for my best friend, Mia. Honestly, Mia's appearance wasn't perfect either, and this was one of the reasons why we were friends. Nevertheless, deep down, I still had a dream to become more beautiful and popular among my classmates. My grandmother has never understood me. She kept saying that inner beauty was much more important than a pretty face. She insisted that good people wouldn't care about other people's appearances. Also, my grandmother loved to travel a lot. So, a couple of weeks ago, she decided to make an around-the-world trip. Before leaving, she gave me a large mirror. At first, I didn't understand why she gave it to me. So, I put it in the far corner of my room and forgot about it for a while. But one day, everything changed. One morning, I woke up and passing by the mirror, I stopped abruptly. The reflection I saw in the mirror didn't look like me at all. My acne had disappeared, my nose looked straight, and my general appearance was prettier and more beautiful as well. I could not believe my eyes. I can't believe that this nightmare is over and I finally will be like everyone else. I thought, but what could have happened? Why did I become so cute? It was a very strange and joyful feeling I had never had before. For some time, I tried to understand what was happening and where that usual ugly Judy had gone. But then Mia called and told me to bring her book, which I had taken the day before. Her call reminded me that it was time to go to school. I was smiling and greeting every passerby on the way to school. People answered me back and wished me to have a nice day. I was sure that all these changes happened because I became more beautiful. So, keeping in mind the awareness of this fact, I entered the classroom and said hello to everyone loudly. My classmates were very surprised, but they said hello back. The rest of the day at school, I answered the teacher's questions. I even volunteered to go to the blackboard to answer questions, although I haven't done anything like that before because of the fear of drawing too much attention to myself. But that day, everything was different. The teachers were surprised at my sudden activity and praised me. My classmates were looking at me more often, and their glances weren't as negative as before. When it was lunchtime, the most popular girls of the school called me to their table. I was very happy and agreed to join them immediately. Although usually at lunch, Mia and I used to sit together at the farthest table. When I had already joined the new company, Mia came up to me. "Why don't we sit together anymore?" she asked in a whisper. I replied that I would explain everything to her later. That day, I talked to my new friends a lot, failed to give even one moment to my old friend Mia, and didn't even notice that fact. I was sure that Mia remained in my past, where I was insecure and not very pretty. But everything changed. I made friends with cool and cute girls, and Mia had to find a new friend who was mousy like she was. And so this went on for several days. Finally, I was as cool as everyone else, and that made me happy. I took no notice of Mia at all, and when she tried to come up to me, I always had better things to do. And besides, I didn't see the point in talking to her because I had more cool friends. Once Mia came up to me again after school and handed me a piece of paper. I grinned, put it in my pocket, and left immediately without saying a word. I didn't even read the paper. I was in a hurry to a summer party organized by my new friends, so I didn't have time for Mia. After arriving home, I began to prepare for the party. When I go to look at myself in the mirror, I saw that my appearance had changed again. But this time, not for the better. My acne, my nose, and my ugly face were back. No, it's not possible. I said, why did the fairy tale end so quickly? I was very upset and started to cry. While I was sitting on the floor looking at my ugly reflection in the mirror, the piece of paper apparently fell out of my pocket and it caught my eye. It was an invitation to a birthday party. Having opened it and read the contents, I understood why Mia came up to me today. According to the note, Mia was upset that we had grown apart, but despite all this, she wanted to see me at her birthday party and she would be very glad if I agreed to come. I used to behave terribly and avoided her for a long time. Did she still want to be friends with me? I didn't even congratulate her on her birthday. I ignored her and thought she wasn't good enough for me. I felt so ashamed that I didn't even care how I looked anymore. I started calling Mia, but she wasn't answering her phone. But when a minute later my phone rang, I was sure it was her. I was wrong. It was my new friends. They asked me when I would come. I had nothing to answer and I just hung up. I looked at the time and realized that it was not too late to make everything right. I ran to the bakery to get a cake. I chose the most beautiful cake in the window and I asked them to write, "Forgive me," on it. As soon as I left the bakery, thunder rumbled and it started raining heavily. I had no umbrella and no money for a taxi, so I had to run to Mia's house on foot. When I got there, I was soaking wet and the cake box was ruined. Mia's mom opened the door. She said that my friend was in her room and it would be better for me to go see her. I headed upstairs worrying and being very anxious at the same time. I thought Mia would chase me away. When I entered the room, Mia was lying on her bed and crying. When she saw me, she sighed and burst into even more tears. I understood the reason for her tears, so I asked for her forgiveness. That evening, we had so much to discuss, and most importantly, I understood how much I missed my true friend. By the way, Mia really liked the cake, which was not in very good condition. After spending too much time in the rain, that evening before going to bed, I decided to look in the mirror one more time. In my grandmother's mirror, my face looked really beautiful. I was so glad to see that I had become pretty again. I was relieved and began to think about what it all meant. But I was so tired that I just fell asleep thinking about the mystery of the mirror. The next morning, I went to school. I met Mia at the entrance and we went inside the school building together. On the way to class, we saw the cool girls who were my new friends, and I decided to introduce myself to them. When we got closer, I saw my reflection in the glass door accidentally. It seemed that I was doing the same duty with imperfect skin and a crooked nose. But the girls still talked with me despite my shortcomings. I realized that all this time my appearance remained the same, while my attitude towards myself and the people around me changed greatly. My new friends liked me, and we all became friends. Now I realize that it's not necessary to be super beautiful for people to like you. The real beauty is inside each of us. A few days later, my mother came home and told me something very upsetting. My grandmother had died. It happened in the ocean. Her liner wrecked and no one survived. That evening, I was sad and remembered all the good moments spent with my beloved grandmother. She used to always say she would die during her trip, and it happened. The last thing she did for me was give me this mirror. She knew that she would not return, and this was her parting gift. I never revealed the secret of the mirror, but I knew one thing for sure. My grandmother left it for a reason. And what do you think about this mysterious mirror? Why can it change appearance and life so abruptly? Help me to figure it out and write your ideas in the comments. I would be grateful for your likes and subscriptions to my channel. Hi, my name is Glory, and I can eat this plate of hot peppers like ice cream without even making a face. I generally like spicy food, and it seems that I am a unique person in some sense. That's why I wanted to share my story with you. For some reason, my parents believe that spicy food is the best medicine for a cold, or flu, and some other seasonal diseases. I don't know if this is true. Personally, I prefer the treatment with honey and lemons, maybe because they are tastier. And since my parents, if necessary, are treated with hot chili peppers during normal times, spicy food practically does not appear in our house. Mom does not understand at all how you can eat something like that voluntarily while Dad is simply indifferent to spicy foods. One day when I was 3, during the winter flu epidemic, chili peppers appeared in our family as usual, from which my parents bite off about 1 millimeter a day. They treated themselves in general, and at some point, I was left alone in the kitchen. And when my mother went in there, she saw me eating a whole chili pepper. I quickly chewed and swallowed it like candy with a smile on my face and started on a second one. My mother at that moment experienced a small death and resurrection. She froze in horror because she was sure I would not survive after that. But when she rushed to save me and saw the smile on my face, she thought she was going crazy and started calling Dad to help. And you know what my dad saw? I chose another pepper and handed him one with the words, "Eat, Daddy. This is very tasty." My parents couldn't believe their eyes and immediately took me to the hospital. But I don't understand why. Neither did the doctors. They asked my parents why they brought them a healthy child and told them not to talk about such nonsense because no 3-year-old child can eat a chili pepper. It's just beyond our reality. And no matter how many times my parents tried to prove that they saw it with their own eyes, the doctor did not believe them. Fortunately, nothing happened to me that day, and I didn't have any negative reactions from eating chili peppers. So the next time my parents saw me chewing raw ginger, they were hardly surprised. But they still asked me if I was experiencing any unpleasant sensations, if it wasn't too spicy for me, to which I replied that it was very tasty. Almost like potatoes with lemon. Strange combination, right? This is how my parents realized that they had a very strange daughter who does not feel the spiciness of food, and it seems generally loves the taste. But they still asked me not to overuse the spicy food, and I tried. One evening, we were on holiday in a country boarding house, and the electricity was cut off there. There was something fascinating and romantic about it because the stars and the moon lit up some stone paths, and the clouds seemed to hang from the sky right to the ground. After a short walk, my parents and I went to a restaurant for dinner. There were a few candles burning instead of electricity, and there was something alluring about this too, because never before had I had to dine in semi-darkness with candlelight. Only the squid served in cream sauce was not salty at all, but I was not upset and decided to add salt to my taste. I added more, then more, and more, but nothing changed, and I had to eat it as it was a big deal, not salted. Some people generally eat food without salt, and that's okay. But suddenly, the electricity was turned on in the room, and my parents' eyes literally popped out. We looked at my plate together, and that there's black squid and black sauce. It turned out that all this time, I was peppering my dish instead of salting it, and I poured it into the plate at least 3 tablespoons of black pepper, but I did not feel the spiciness again. I didn't understand why everyone was so afraid of peppers. I personally love them very much. However, less than an hour later, I felt the full charm of spicy food, or rather its consequences. The fact is that my stomach began to hurt very badly, worse than it had ever hurt before. It felt like I was being cut by thousands of knives from the inside, and nothing relieved my condition. That day, I was hospitalized, and the doctors had to work hard to get me back to normal. And it took more than 2 weeks. Then I promised my parents and myself, first of all, that I would no longer abuse spicy food. Also, I said that I would try to be more attentive in the future and look at my plate under any circumstances, even in the dark. And I honestly tried to keep my promise until I found out about one competition. We were walking with a friend in a park and saw a crowd of people. They were looking at something in fascination. When we got closer, we saw that the host had prepared hot peppers for 5 daredevils and showed the prize of the winner, a PlayStation. No, I didn't rush and didn't give myself away. I just invited my friend to watch the princess, and I was really interested to see how others eat peppers. Their eyes were watering, their mouths were wide open, and they were breathing like dragons. Their faces were red and snot was coming out of their noses. A very pitiful sight. I was very sorry for each of them, and I wanted to alleviate their fate by eating all the peppers for them. And when I saw that the maximum that the contestants could eat was 2 peppers, I felt somehow offended. For myself or for the peppers, I don't know. So I said, "Do you want me to show you how to eat peppers?" And within a minute, I was eating the spicy chilies one by one without crying or blushing. The audience was shocked, as was my friend, and the main prize was mine. I was happy and even somewhat proud of myself, but the joy didn't last long because almost immediately my stomach ached again. I curled up like an arc in the middle of the street and realized that I could not take a step. I could not even scream in pain because all my strength was spent on breathing. And it was very difficult because all of my muscles were very tense. Soon, I was in the hospital, and this time the doctor fought for my life for almost a month. And when I came to my senses, I was told something interesting. I was told the results of my examination, according to which I have an atrophied trigeminal nerve. I was told the results of my examination, according to which I have atrophy, trigeminal nerve, which is responsible for the body's response to spicy food. And that's why I can eat tons of chili peppers and not feel the spiciness at all. And since the last time my body was seriously affected by a large amount of pepper, the doctor strictly forbade me to even look at spicy food. Otherwise, the consequences for me could be disastrous. My parents took it quite seriously, and all the peppers disappeared from our house. I accepted this fact and no longer touched spicy food, notifying everyone about it. But my friend Angela didn't seem to understand. One day, she threw a party and invited me. There were a lot of people, and for some reason, everyone was just staring at me all night. I soon found out the reason. Angela said they wanted me to demonstrate how I could handle a whole plate of chili peppers and asked me to agree. I was very angry with her and said that such entertainment was dangerous for me and my health. And Angela shook her head and understood. After about 30 minutes, they served us ice cream, and it was truly exotic, beat strawberry cherry. Everyone started eating it with interest and continued to stare at me, and then they started taking pictures. If you only knew how much this annoyed me. Okay, guys, I understand, but it's over. I won't eat the chili peppers. Is that clear? I said, unable to bear it. And then I felt the familiar pain in my stomach, and a moment later, I lost consciousness. This time, I underwent a major surgery because my ice cream was stuffed with ground hot pepper, and my digestive organs were simply corroded. It's all because of my sneaky ex-friend Angela, because she was the one who made the ice cream and almost killed me for a show. Now, I chose my friends carefully and don't tell anyone about my abilities. Unfortunately, some people are willing to do anything for a show. Do you like spicy food? Can you eat a plate of hot chili peppers like me? Share your answers in the comments, click on the thumbs up button, and subscribe to our channel.